Welcome to our live event today. We are going to be talking about using Figma designs to be able to effectively deliver software incrementally. I think we should probably go around and give a brief introduction of ourselves. So I'll start. I'm Penny. I'm a consultant here with Industrial Logic, and I've been in software development for about 15 years in various roles from product management, QA to development. So that's about me. Cecil, why don't you go next?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Cecil Williams. Hi, everybody. I am the director of training with Industrial Logic. I have been at this a long time, since probably the late 80s, and held just about every role, and looking forward to sharing thoughts on this. So, yeah.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Drew Wallace. I've been at IL for a little over 2 years now, but I've been in the trenches for over 20 years. When I say trenches, I mean the predictive ways of working trenches, which we're going to get into in this conversation. Also, I just want to say I'm excited about this talk because you guys are some of my favorite people to work with, and have been for the past few months that we're working on this our project. So I just want to say that just to start off with. And yeah, that's me.
And hi, I'm Shauna. I'm the Chief of Staff at Industrial Logic, and I was the project manager on the project that we're going to talk to you about.
Great. So yeah, Drew's kind of introduced it. Shauna's talked about her role in it, but let's talk about what we've been working on and kind of how this topic came about. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we started tackling a modernization of our Industrial Logic website. And we actually used Figma designs for this. So does somebody want to just kind of introduce how we got into using Figma designs and how we kind of managed doing that so that we could build it incrementally?
I guess I joined the process in the middle, so I'm probably not the best person. But
I can
take it, Shauna.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So we hired an outside marketing team to help us with our rebranding. And part of that was they sent us these fabulous Figma designs for the new website with all of the new colors and all of the rebranding that we needed. And it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was, we got this really huge file.
It was great.
It was big.
It was like the 200-page design document.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot there.
Yeah. And, the way that we work around here, we collaborate really well together. And so we all just kind of picked apart this Figma design, and we weren't sure where to start. And that's where we started doing Incrementally. And anybody want to add anything to that?
Well, I would add that I think, one of the problems that we felt we were having is that, so we got this marketing firm to help us, but then they wanted to go off and design the whole thing. And we quickly realized that, well, that's not how we like to work. So can you just start giving us some of the design and then we'll build on that? And they were not quite prepared to work that way, but they did get to that point. And I think I want to add one thing that we're not haters of Figma. We actually like it, and we do use it. Like Penny said, our intent here is not to bash Figma. It's just how can you use it and not have it turn into, like Drew said, just a big requirements document or a design that's, you're waiting for the whole thing to get done before you do anything, because that we know is not a great way to do it. We like to do things where we can get something started and get feedback and get some use out of something early instead of waiting all the way to the whole thing's done. So yeah. I think that was a big challenge for us, was how to get an organization that's not used to that to work our way and evolve it instead of trying to have the design all figured out all up front, right?
Yeah. Similar to Drew, I came in kind of in the middle of things. One of the things that Figma gave me was a good idea of what kind of the overall look and feel of the website that we wanted to get. So I could kind of see how it carried over from the different pages or segments. For me, that was super helpful. And it was nice when Shauna and Josh both said, hey, you don't have to hold exactly to these Figma designs, right? Try to show, if there's a better way to lay this out, go ahead and try it. We can bounce ideas back and forth, say yay or nay. And we tried a lot of different things, and a lot of things we didn't hold to exactly what was on the Figma design.
And the thing is, that came naturally to us, right, Penny? Because yeah, I appreciated that when we would get okay, slow down. We don't have to follow the design exactly. We can do something simpler. That was refreshing to me. But we kind of just took to it like fish to water. And that kind of made me think about the fact that, okay, so the design firm that we partnered with may not have been, we're like fish in the water, right? Fish don't know they're swimming in water. But our basic way of working and approaching work is very evolutionary, right? Or revolutionary, pun intended. But evolutionary, right? So like it's in one of the modern agile principles, right? Like experiment and learn rapidly.
Yeah.
So that's exactly the evolutionary way. But other people we work with may not have that fundamental mindset. So we take to it pretty easily, but it took a little bit more work and more collaboration to kind of translate that predictive design mindset over to the way we work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I have to say that I did not work like that before this. So when the Figma designs were brought to us, I was like, okay, great. Let's start at page 1. Let's start at page 2. And then the team taught me that, no, this isn't the best way of working, because I'm such a planner as part of, my normal role here. And it was scary at first, honestly, because it's like, wow, how do you keep up with all these people doing things that aren't 1, 2, 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then by the time we got done with it, it was like, this is amazing. Why aren't more people working like this?
Right.
Because it made total sense, but it was scary. And I can see how people, wouldn't want to veer off just the normal template.
Yeah. So one of the challenges I think kind of that you spoke up about, Shauna, was we had lots of different people coming in and out of this project, based upon what engagements people were with or other things that they were working on. So that met in a challenge. So how did we break work down small enough such that people had that flexibility of coming in and out, yet still making progress on delivery?
Well, I think part of that, Shauna, had to do with the way we prioritize work, right?
Yeah.
And that allowed us to figure out what slice to work on. What tiny slice can we work on that is kind of independent enough so that, if we're interruptible, right, is what I'm trying to say. If someone's pulled off, it doesn't stop the other person from working because we're working in these thin slices that are prioritized based on the feedback that we're getting. So yeah, I'll start with that, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that helped us.
Yeah. And we received that feedback from a number of ways. We would figure out what was going on with Google Analytics, see which of our pages were being seen the most. And so that was an easy thing. You fix the homepage first, right? And then you kind of go down from there. Or we saw, if we knew that people were going to be looking at certain categories on the page, like if we were having a workshop or Josh was having a talk that we knew would bring a lot of people to the website, we would focus on that first. Mm-hmm. And we kept, it was a really simple Google sheet that we kept track of all of this stuff. Yeah. But so it was easy if someone got pulled from the project, they would say, okay, and a new person came on, it was like, okay, what do I work on now? And it's like, okay, we'll check the sheet, and we had daily meetings, which were really, really helpful because it really kept us aligned.
Yep.
I also think, and Dave Rooney kind of made a comment about the high fidelity designs that, we would get the design from the marketing firm, and Drew already mentioned this, that we didn't take it verbatim, right? We would look at it and try to figure out And then we would figure out what we could do, and could we break it down into something that we could deliver right away, and not necessarily do the whole design up front. As far as implementation goes, even though we have what completely, when we're done, we want it to look like, can we do a little bit, get that out there, see if we like it, and then add to it. And if not, we could make adjustments. But rather than just taking it, oh, this is what they gave us, so we've got to do it exactly like they gave it to us. In fact, I would say, in my experience, when I was involved, which was, I've been involved off and on for the whole time, I think there's more times that we decided not to use exactly what they gave us than we used, than we took it as they gave it to us. But it was like, it was a great starting point to say, okay, we don't know enough as, we're not designers, so let's get their inputs, but then let's take that and figure out what we think we like about it and what we don't. And then we would tweak things. And so I think it was also helpful that, we as an organization weren't afraid, like I think Tim mentioned his comment about like changing it after we got it out there. We would get something out there and then we might change it in a little bit. It could be we change it multiple times in a day, or we might change it in the course of a week or two or whatever. But I don't think we ever felt like, once it was out there, it had to be that way.
Yeah.
And I don't think in our case, our website's something that, you're not on it every few minutes going, oh my gosh, somebody just changed it. Right. So, but even if you have users on a site that's on it all the time, the fact that you're improving it, I think should be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still tweaking it to this day. Sorry, Drew.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it's like this, it's a living and breathing thing that we're constantly trying to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're comfortable with change. That's the, just the fish don't know they're in water thing, is that we expect the plan to change the way we work. There's not this fear of, oh my gosh, we're deviating from the big design up front. There's an expectation that, there's a design, but the plan's going to change. And I was talking about this earlier too. It's like, it's the metaphor, right? The software metaphor you use kind of influences this. Like, we look at software development more as a more organic thing, a collaborative human thing that's chaotic. It's not, let's build a bridge, so we need a detailed plan first. And not only do we need the detailed plan, but we need to stick to the plan.
Yeah.
So we're completely different. It's like, we need a small plan up front. We need a walking skeleton. All it needs to do is walk, and it needs to have a skeleton, and we expect to change it. We don't expect to stick to it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no fear of, we're gonna miss the prediction, because we don't attempt to make a prediction in the first place. So it's just something that comes naturally. It feels better. It's a better way of working.
Yeah. And there were things that we did too that, helped us make these incremental changes. Most of the time, we weren't making huge sweeping changes to a page when we deployed, right? And so we could see how people were reacting or see how it was being used to know the impact or what the next change was that we needed to make. I mean, initially, a lot of it was just, hey, we changed the background and put some page markers kind of in there to separate sections of the web page. We changed our header, we changed our footer. A lot of times that was the simplest, easiest change that we put out there. Then we went in and worried about content and content placement, and we could make very, very small changes and push them out super fast.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think we definitely focus on trying to get our whatever work we're doing to get it out and start benefiting from it pretty early. And an example that I haven't worked on the website for a little while, so I actually updated my local repo yesterday, and it's probably been maybe a week since I had done that, and I got several hundred commits over the course of just these few days that people that have been working on it have done, because we do so many small things, and we just always want to be committing small changes and get them out there. And we have a pipeline that'll push our changes out once we commit them, and we try to work together so that we don't have to do a pull request and have somebody review it asynchronously and then get feedback. And We just try to do small changes that, are easy to, it's less risky that way as well. People think that if you are making constant changes, that's very risky, but actually it's the opposite, because it's such a small change. It's so easy to undo or to know what caused the break. So.
Yeah. Great points. Like micro. So we micro commit.
Yeah.
So, a bunch of times a day. And we avoid that big bang merge at the end, that big bang deployment. There's micro deployments, if you will. So there's no merge conflict at the end. A lot of times in a predictive environment, you try to predict a big plan, and you try to stick to the plan. Then at the end, you do it's big design up front and then big deployment at the end.
Yeah.
And then that's just a big headache. Like the whole time during the whole development process, there's like, I'm going to have to deploy this soon. I don't know what's going to happen. That's completely removed when you're taking these baby steps, doing these micro commits, and just evolving in tiny evolutions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did that help us in terms of like risk management? Like, I know a lot of times when I was doing it, I'd get stuck on something, and eventually we had to just kind of come back and talk about it. But I think those small frequent changes help us manage risk as well with different types of designs that were coming up.
Oh yeah, I remember Penny and I sometimes we work on something and we'd spike it, try to come up with a spike solution. We'd have to back out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something that helped mitigate the risk was going back to feedback, right? We talk about feedback. The way I look at feedback is, I think there's user feedback, but not only did we get user feedback in the form of, like Google Analytics or the interviews that Jay did, shout out to Jay, with some of our target users, but also customer feedback. Like, and I would say maybe Josh was a customer, Sean might have been a customer. And since we use the site, we're also people who are users, right? Mm-hmm. Internally, we use the site for things. So there's that. There's also feedback that comes from actually starting to work on something and then realizing that we the juice ain't worth the squeeze, right? So to speak. It might be too costly to develop a feature that might not be as valuable to the end user. But we don't know that until we start working with the code and get feedback from the existing design, get feedback from the tech stack we're using. Mm-hmm. And I think because we're so collaborative in the way that we work, we might go off in an hour to work, but we'll come back and share it. Mm-hmm. We'll have screenshots that we share. We'll have little video clips that we share. It's highly collaborative. So we're getting feedback from the group constantly. Yep. And that helps mitigate risk. So, you're not deploying something that doesn't work or spending a ton of time before deploying something.
That's right.
With this feedback in this collaborative kind of way of working. So that mitigates risk, right?
What were some of the things that we actually implemented on the site that weren't actually part of our Figma designs? I know there were several of them.
Oh, that would have been the great search bar at the top. That was... that was not on the design at all. And I was always a big proponent for the search bar. And I know Drew was too, because it was just like, I never even knew where to look for stuff on our own website. And it's like, I'm basically on this website like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right?
Yep.
And I think it's like, it's one thing when you're talking to your peers, at work and saying, oh, we need to do this. And we're like, no, we've got this whole list of other things to do. Yeah. And then Jay did these, the interviews with our, a few clients and, people who were really invested in the website. And that was the top thing. It's like, well, how do I find things?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so Drew took the many hours, God love you, Drew. I mean, he did a fantastic job of the search bar and we got it done. And I mean, that was the big one that I remember, I think, because it had such an impact on it, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and that was a big thing that was missed in the Figma. I mean, and it came out clear. And the beautiful thing that Drew did was he started out with a super primitive search.
Right. Exactly.
And it has evolved into something that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a cool tool and it's fit for purpose, right? Yeah. the origin of it, like Shauna said, we always wanted to do it. So we had internal feedback or our feedback, but the user came back and said, Shauna said, I don't know where to find stuff. I know you guys have an agile workshop. I know you guys have a refactoring workshop, but I don't know what to click to find it, right?
Right.
So also Penny implemented, that's a good example of, I think Josh came in and said, well, can't we just provide, we don't have to go to search immediately. The first step actually was a page that Penny put up, the catalog page, that gave people more direct access to our workshops and our offerings, right?
Yeah.
And then an evolution of that really was the search feature. It was like, all right, we can do that. We can also provide this search tool that, also gets them to what they need faster. And also the thing about that, starting from you talk about starting very simple and rough. I pulled the initial draft from an existing piece of functionality that was already on the site. I think Cecil may have built that.
I did, yeah.
Right. It was the search feature on the blog page.
That's right.
All I did was take that and extend that so that it's site wide, and we just iterated. First we returned posts, then it was all right. Let's return workshops, then let's return case studies, until it's a pretty comprehensive search results list, and it gives you quick access to what you're looking for. So it's fit for purpose. It's not AWS Elasticsearch. It's not AI driven, but that would have been over engineering.
That's right. They don't need that. And I think I wanted to add that I think one of the things that was really neat about the way we did the search is that we took something we had, we thought it was sufficient, and we expanded it, but we didn't expand it completely right off the bat, right? We added a little bit of more. Instead of just searching blogs, let's also search blogs plus something else, and then we kept, because we wanted to make sure it made sense that it was gonna be a useful tool.
Right.
We didn't want to invest a ton of time and effort if it wasn't going to turn out to be worthwhile.
Right. It was an experiment.
Yeah, it was an experiment, and as we found that it was helpful, then we said, okay, now let's start expanding it, and that wasn't all that difficult because you already had the foundation laid to be able to then add to it. And I think that was great because I remember we discussed, going off and doing a more complex search solution, and then we realized we didn't really need that it wasn't going to be necessary, Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it kind of surprised me too. Like,
yeah.
Oh wow, this is pretty useful. The feedback was good.
Yeah. Jessica just posted a question. While working.
Shout out Jessica. What's up, Jess?
Hey, Jessica.
While working on a project with a large upfront design, there were outdated Figma designs that no longer reflected the team's vision, but this wasn't communicated. Have you ever encountered a situation like this?
Yes.
Right?
We did. And this was also really difficult when new people came on.
Yeah.
Because they would be looking at the old pages, not knowing that we had moved on. And nobody wants to read, weeks and weeks worth of, Slack messages to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
So we really had to be on the same page on that.
Yeah. Or people would come on and we'd ask them to start helping with the website, and they would go into the Figma design and just assume, okay, I'm just going to start building what I see until they start, getting in with the huddles and finding out that, no, that's not what we want. We don't want you to, don't do exactly what it says. We have a brain. We can think about this and see what really is going to work best. It's more of a guide than it is an absolute. And I think, so it would be easy. And I definitely found myself looking at certain designs going, is that what we're doing? And you guys were like, no, that's not what we're doing. And I'd be like, oh, okay. Because I didn't realize, that, and it also gave us a chance to give feedback to the designers that, hey, this is not exactly what we want. This is good, but can you change it in whatever way we thought might be a good change? And then they'd come back with a new version. But a lot of times they would just do that in the same file. And so to Jessica's point, it would be easy to get mistaken on what you're doing if you're just going into the file without talking to anybody. And so we definitely tried to stay. We met multiple times a week to make sure we were all, agreed on what we were working on and what it was supposed to be priority wise and all that. But then we also would try to work together a lot on the implementation too.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Like when I first started, I started working and looking at the Figma designs just to kind of familiarize myself kind of with what we were trying to go for.
Yeah.
And I left for a project and then came back to doing more. I did not pick up Figma designs again because I kind of already had the idea of what we were shooting for. I didn't need to go look at the Figma designs.
Yeah.
It already veered so far off in a lot of cases that it was not even useful at that point.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point that you're making, Penny, about the accuracy of the Figma design, right? So I wonder how many people spend a lot of time going back and trying to keep it up to date. Like that's one of the issues with doing upfront requirements and a lot of documentation up front is by the time you get to implementing, things may change or, your competitors are causing you to do things different or whatever. And now all of a sudden the real truth is in the software you have, not what the design said. And my experience is that I don't necessarily put a lot of effort in going back and make sure that documentation is accurate because like you said, you can go look at the site and see what we're doing and that. And if I was talking about software in general, that's where I would use tests to really be my documentation is the tests are really going to explain how does the app work more so than anything somebody wrote initially on what they wanted, because what they think they want and what they need is generally not the same. And what you end up building is what they're going to use, which doesn't always match. And so while there's need for documentation, I mean, heck, I've been involved in projects at a financial company where we got audited for SOC 2 compliance and we passed the flying colors and we had no documentation, but we had tons of tests and the tests were behavior driven tests. So they explained what the system did and it can work. So, relying on the Figma design to be the absolute truth is probably not a good thing. And I think it's good to point that out that, you need to ask.
Yep.
So, and that kind of answers Perry's question, which is when you decide to deviate from the original Figma design, do you ever go back and update them? I wouldn't waste my time to go do that.
What documentation?
My time or energy. I'll just look at the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't go back. I don't remember ever once asking the design firm to, hey, can you update this design? Because we just didn't use it. It's either we used it or didn't use it. And that was it.
Yeah, and they did that for a while. And then it was just, then we got to the point where it's like, well, why ask them to do more work? Because I'm sure that they were kind of pulling their hair out as well. Like, okay, you guys keep changing things. And oftentimes there was, we would ask them to redesign something. And the time that it took them to redesign it, we had already come up with our own design.
Right.
And so it wasn't going to match anyway.
Right.
We actually have another one from a LinkedIn user that says, as a dev, while I appreciate product design, my focus is primarily code conversion, and this has led to frustration on both sides. At best, we ran the design iteration at N-1 cadence, so a sprint behind the dev iteration. Are there techniques to reduce this friction? Is it right to think about design metrics to make it measurable?
Yeah. Well, that's something we haven't talked about, at least as far as the code conversion part. I think if I understand what they're suggesting there is that Figma can give you usable code that you could take and then put into the app. And if you're trying to just take that verbatim and use it, there's going to be some effort to get it. It doesn't work 100%, right? There's some effort you got to take to merge it in and get it working. And then, I've always been amazed at how well I can implement what designers come up with, because I've worked on projects where I had designers in Illustrator or they're in literally just in Keynote designing things and giving it to me. And then I got to turn around and implement them. And sometimes I'm thinking, man, I don't know if I can build this even, but usually I can. but that is a lot of work. And then that time frame, my experience is trying to keep that distance as short as possible from the time they come up with the design to the time I try to implement. Because if I'm going to have issues and we've got to have a conversation around, what are the problems I'm having so that they understand what I can or can't do. And that helps them do better designs. I think that, it's all about, Drew said this earlier, right? All about the way we work is about collaboration. I mean, we've all said that, right? I mean, that's our big thing. You have to talk with each other about it and keep them involved. And if they're, that's, again, one of the things we wanted to point out about this is so many people want to have design on their own, build something and then just hand it off. And that's why we kind of said it's not much different than the way we used to do written requirements. It's the same problems. And so I think I don't know what you guys have for suggestions. I might say for metrics, how much rework are you doing? How much are you going back and getting, versus just work together on it to begin with, if you can.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the metric, I don't know, the friction between the design and the build. I mean, if you keep design as simple as possible, maybe the goal is to keep it as simple as possible and to Yagni, right? You ain't gonna need it. So there's no need to try to include everything on the design, right? If we're moving in an iterative, incremental fashion, we know that there's gonna be evolution. So we're not trying to optimize the design phase, so to speak. We're trying to optimize getting value delivered to the user.
Yeah.
So maybe the focus on getting good metrics for design and good metrics for development could be switched to say, let's get the customer with, let's get this value delivered to the customer. And let that be the guiding metric.
Yeah.
That might reduce some of the friction because it just removes that concern altogether.
Yeah. When I was working on the website, I did not necessarily feel the need to use the code from Figma. Now, if I was stuck and I needed an idea of where to go with the code, I could do that. For me, and I felt like this was one of the actual bigger pieces that we're missing on the website for website design that we're kind of having to go back and eat now, is identifying the commonly reused components. And componentizing those. So that would have been helpful to have like a style guide for particular components. To me, that's really important. But again, I would build that style guide out incrementally as we're doing the changes to the pages on the website, not trying to define all of those up front. Because that can get cluttered and you're going to get down into the whole, you aren't going to need it yet kind of thing.
Exactly.
Or are we going to use it? Especially when you're dealing with the more complex UI type stuff. And that's really important. So
I like Tim's comment about that there's a difference between UI and UX, right? Like the user experience is the important part of how does the system help the user achieve something, and then is the design is it pleasing? Is it easy to find things and that kind of stuff? But the first goal is, can I achieve my goal? And I whenever I talk about this, I like to point out, like, if you're I'm an iPhone user, not Android, so I'll talk to iPhone, but I'm sure Android is similar. But like, there's two buttons on the home of an iPhone, and that's the flashlight and the camera, because those are the two things that everybody wants to do immediately or easily. It's all based on frequency of use, right? And so I'm sure there were a lot of studies involved to figure that out. And whatever your app, whatever you're building, that's something you need to figure out. So, we certainly focused on what's on our homepage is based on what do we think users people coming to find out about us want to know right away, right? And that's what we focused on. And that's kind of even where the search came in. Like, if somebody lands on our site and they want to know something about us, they've heard something or they've read about us or something, and they want to find out more about it. They want to be able to key off of some keywords. That's, I think, where that functionality came about because of that.
Yep. All right, so we are close to time. So just to kind of wrap up, are there any key things that you guys want to leave folks with in regards to using Figma designs and incrementally building out our software?
I got a general statement. I think one big takeaway for me, and it not only applies to evolutionary design with Figma or front end, back end, what have you, is generally speaking, all these practices that we follow for lean delivery, test-driven development, refactoring, stories, whatever it is, the environment has to be conducive to follow these practices, right? So evolutionary design, the way we've been working, involved a lot of feedback from users, not only users, customers, as I mentioned before, a lot of collaboration. And if the environment is not set up, I'm talking about not just technically, but socially.
Right.
We talk about psychological safety being the underlying principle of modern agile. If that's not there, we can kiss, evolutionary design goodbye, in my opinion. We'll be doing some form of it that we're not reaping the benefits, because collaboration is central. With the feedback aspect, there has to be no fear of failing, because you're going to get negative feedback, you're going to get positive feedback, but we're not looking at it in this environment as a loss. Like we value learning. So every time we get feedback, we're pulling it in, because it's like, okay, we are welcoming this correction or this feedback. There's not an environment that, oh, you did it wrong, get a slap on the wrist. You did it wrong, you're going to not get this promotion. There's none of that in this environment. So that really forms the two legs of this evolutionary design, the collaboration and the embracing the feedback.
Yeah.
And without that, this is not possible.
Right. And I think, to your point, Drew, we just applied the way we work to Figma designs as well as everything else. And again, we talked about it already, but the designers, because they were external, they weren't used to it, but they became used to it. And same with Shauna. She's already talked about how she wasn't used to it, but now that she's done it, she's like us. She wants to work this way all the time, and it's because it is so beneficial,
right?
To see getting that value as soon as possible and start using things. It can be done even with Figma. So I think that's the important point that I think we wanted to try to get to convey to people today.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. Yeah. Shauna, do you have anything you wanted to leave folks with?
Don't be scared. Don't be scared by it. I mean, that was the big thing. Like I said, at the beginning, I was completely scared. It's like, what? We're going to veer off the design? But if you're working with the right team, and like Drew said, if you have like the psychological safety built in, it's going to be great. And you're going to find this brand new way of working that is going to completely change how you work with everything.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you, Shauna, Drew, Cecil, for participating and sharing your knowledge with us. So we hope you all have a good rest of the week, and we will see you guys next week.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.